everybody, and welcome to Bread and Butter, where we're serving up the basics the average Hearthstone player needs for improvement. Doc, how you doing tonight? Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Doc is sick tonight. Doc has con crud or something. He went to Atlanta last week to DreamHack, and he has lost his voice. It could have been from all the gluten from baking this week. This is apparently the worst week in baking history before Thanksgiving, so... we miss Doc. We hope he's feeling better. But good news, we have a backup plan. Just a Guy, how are you? Oh, okay. So normally our backup, Just a Guy, would be here, but he's getting ready to move across the country. So he was not able to help us today. So I was able to find Send Me Your Arms to fill in at the very last minute. Smarms, how are you tonight?
Good. It's more like I just crawl into any podcast and it's like, hey guys, listen to me. Hey, I'm here. I'm coming for everything.
You have been on a lot of we'll talk about that later. You have started to build up your resume of podcasting without having one yourself. That's actually having now, this is I believe our 9th episode of Bread and Butter. Being on podcasts without actually having to do them, it's kind of easy. I like it. That's a smart way to go.
I know. I'm a genius. It's really, really great plan.
Well, you are here to help me with our wonderful returning guest tonight, and that would be DragonRider. DragonRider, how are you tonight?
I am doing very well. Thank you. Excited for this, and I was surprised by our wonderful addition to the show tonight. So she popped in the Discord call and was like my jaw dropped. I'm like, it's Mars, yay.
DragonRider can't escape from me. I just stalk her around being like, hey, hi, have you considered talking to me now? What about now?
I love it. Just wait.
Yeah, I intentionally didn't send DragonRider the show notes until the very last minute, so it could be a little bit of surprise because you guys have actually had an opportunity to work together a lot recently on some of your other shows. So we'll talk about that shortly. But I think it's time to set the table. Of that, or maybe I will. I don't know. So Smarms, what have you been doing in Hearthstone, or maybe even outside of Hearthstone? What's going on with you lately?
Oh, inside Hearthstone, I've been losing quite a bit, so that's going well. Also, I've been playing a lot of random things and a lot of battlegrounds to where, like, I don't have to think about it. And also, if I'm not, like, attached to the class that I'm playing, then I'm okay, like, if I need to quit mid-game and, I don't know, go deal with something on the stove. But yeah, other than that, it's been Thanksgiving. I was complaining about, I baked a lot of bread because I make homemade stuffing with, like, my homemade bread, and but then, like, you know, learning about how much Doc bakes, I'm like, I have no right to complain about how much I've been baking.
Well, to be fair, he gets paid for it.
Yeah, and I'm just the idiot that does it for free.
Well, I'm sure you said you were doing it with your nieces today?
Oh, so today was Christmas cookies, which is a different, separate, you know, important baking activity that has to happen. Yeah, my nieces and nephews.
Fantastic. And I appreciate you being able to find some time after that because I know baking can be tiring. I'm glad you were able to come over here and join. At least Doc tells us baking is tiring, so I'll take him at his word for that.
That's the benefit of...
Dawn. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, benefit of forced child labor. You make them do everything. You just set it up and then, you know, send them back home to their parents all sugar high. All right.
How about you, Dawn? What have you been up to?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna just go with like my typical answer of like, what have I not been up to? It feels like I've been up to so many things. You know, we're wrapping up. We're getting now to the tail end of card reveal season, so it's been very busy. I've been putting out YouTube videos each day after the reveals for each day, so it's felt like a ton of videos. You know, trying to keep up with that. Earlier today, we just did our like 6-hour long entire set review with Amberflight Gaming. also have been, this month is Amberflight's 3-year anniversary, so been doing stuff for that. We put out like player interviews. Yeah, thank you. You got a little golf clap there from Tito. And then today just made a big exciting announcement for Amberflight, which is that, obviously we are having some stuff next year coming, like expanding beyond just Hearthstone, things like that. But we also announced and revealed our new logo. We are kind of rebranding our logo, so revealed that. So super excited for that. And then, this week was Thanksgiving. So, it's just me and my husband and my father-in-law. That's how it's been the last, handful of years. But it's great. We ate some food, and then we played a ton of board games, which last weekend and then Thanksgiving was a bunch of the new Clank Catacombs game that we just got. And Clank is like one of my absolute most favorite board games. Like, it's still card games, but it's board games, and it's amazing, and I love it.
I've never even heard of it, but it sounds fun. If it's like combo board game, card game.
It's so much fun.
What is it about? I've never heard of it.
So their little thing, it's a deck building adventure. So the original Clank, there's like several now, and they've had expansions. This is the newest one, but basically you are like thieves, and you go into like a dungeon where there's a dragon, but you go in and just try to steal a bunch of treasure. And like, you build your deck along the way, and you create what's called clank. It's like, AKA like you're making noise in this dungeon, and there's little like wooden cubes, and the dragon will attack every now and then, and you mix up all the cubes in a bag, and you have like RNG effect of pulling out cubes, and taking damage when your cubes get pulled. And now my husband is staring at me over the top of the computer as I explain this. I love Clank.
You must have won this weekend, and that's why he's staring at
Okay,
you.
so he's saying he survived. So in Clank, there's like, the original has just a main board. This newest one, there's like tiles, and you kind of create the board as you go. So every game's different. But there's always like the area that you have to go back to where you started to get out of this cave, this dungeon. And there's a little like safe area. And if you die outside of the safe area, if you take enough damage, you don't get to count your points at the end of the game and stuff because you died. If you get to the safe area, you get to count your points, but you don't get like extra bonus points for escaping. I am the very greedy player that will steal as much treasure and gold and stuff throughout the game as I can and try to accumulate as many points as I can. And I always make it to the safe zone. So I technically still get to count my points and stuff. I just don't get the bonus. But my husband always gets out and then gets those bonus points. And he claims that I don't win because I don't actually get all the way out. But in the rules, I get to the safe zone and I still get to count my points, so I win.
I think that counts. You're safe at the end of it. I am 100% on board with your interpretation of this.
Yeah, I won, I think, 3/4 of the games, and we win.
We're getting comments from the peanut gallery over there.
Yeah, he's holding up a 0 with his hand, a goose egg, because
all right, Mr. DragonRider, I think you're wrong.
He's just mad because I actually beat him at that game, and he gets competitive.
Nice. Well, that sounds fun. And for me, I'm hitting the final home stretch at work for a deadline, which is supposed to be on Tuesday. And if you ever work in tech, you don't want to schedule deadlines 2 days after the week of a holiday because no one's at work. And if you're at a big corporation, if you want anything approved or if you need access to anything, you need certain people there. And usually people are like, oh, here's my backup, but your backup is also on vacation. So it has been a very frustrating week for me there. But hopefully after we get through this today or the next couple days, followed, we'll have probably like another 2 weeks of, integration and testing and all that. Hopefully we're ease through Christmas and be a little less crazy. And, you know, I'm thankful to have a job, so I can't complain. A lot of other people have had issues with that, especially if you happen to work for Elon Musk or worked for Elon Musk. But I hope you're enjoying your nice 3-month vacation and find yourself landing on your feet. As far as gaming, I've been streaming most of the time. I've been gaming and starting to see a little bit of an increase in the community, which has been a lot of fun. I'm starting to stream some other games. Like I play Civ with my friend on Friday nights, and so I just decided to start streaming that. And you know, people come hang out, and you know, I'm not trying to be as entertaining as I am if I'm trying to be a Hearthstone streamer, but you know, it's fun to have people just stop by and you know, talk about Civ and doing that thing. So it's been exciting. Now, Dragonflight is dropping for World of Warcraft, and before I started this whole podcasting streaming thing, I run a raiding guild. I raid a couple nights a week, so I'm probably going to start branching into WoW streaming. And on Tuesday, when you could make the drachnids, because it was a pre-patch, I said, you know what, we're going to try streaming WoW tonight. And I was in my Discord for WoW, and we had people talking to me there and people talking to me in the stream, and I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing in WoW, and that was some sensory overload. So I don't know how people stream WoW and like raiding nights and stuff like that, but we're going to have to figure it out because that's interesting and fun. But I'll tell you what, even just thinking about it makes me hungry. So why don't we have some appetizers? All right, so normally this is where Doc and I would interview our guest, but our guest is Dawn, and we've already talked to Dawn, and I don't think you want to hear us interview her every month when she comes on. You know who she is. You know she's fantastic already. Now, my co-host, Smarms, you may not know her. I mean, if you're listening to Bread and Butter, you've more than likely listened to some other show she's been on because she's been on so many of them. But if you haven't, let's help you get to know her because she is just a fantastic person to talk to.
I'm getting to the point where I hope like anybody who's like slightly irritated by me, it's like, haha, you can't get away. Just my bullshit everywhere.
I mean, that's how you build engagement in this world. You know, you just keep
irritate
showing up
people
everywhere.
irritate people to like Stockholm syndrome, and then eventually they'll be like, all right, I give up.
I don't think people will though, because I don't think you bring that on folks. But so normally Doc would do the interview portion of this, but I think instead of DragonRider, how would you feel about doing the interview portion of this tonight?
I love it. Let's do it. I also appreciate you guys do have some questions kind of already plugged in here, so I will take some of these here. But you know, we have to start with the basics, which we're definitely going to be talking about Hearthstone basics later. But Smarms, the basics. People that may not know you, please. Who are you? What is it that you do? Let us get to know you a little bit.
So I go by Send Me Your Arms on Twitch. Twitch is one of the big things I do. And then I was also just invited to be a permanent co-host on Dr. 3, which is very exciting. So those are the two main places that you can find me. And yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Tito's eyes are huge.
Tito,
wait.
Did you miss
breaking
this,
news?
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. We just broke some news here on Bread and Butter.
I mean,
fantastic.
you're only half a week late, Tito, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It came out on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so
yes, yeah, it's been a week where it's difficult for people to catch up on that. But okay, so what is Dr. 3, and what are you going to be doing with that then, since maybe people aren't familiar with that?
So Dr. 3 is about leveling up your Hearthstone game, and I'm hoping to finally make Legend, and maybe if they talk to me enough, if my dear sweet co-host talk to me enough, I might actually do okay in this game. But yeah, it's great. So far we've been talking a lot about the different cards that have been coming out, and it's been a blast.
So on that note, are you replacing somebody on that show, or are you guys going to rename it Dr. 4?
So Major Death has decided that to focus on more his Marvel stuff, as well as like he's had a lot of big life events. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, when you had started that and you were in your and I'm gonna be a permanent co-host, I really thought you were gonna say Blizzlet. I'm not gonna lie.
No, as much as I keep pestering them, apparently they won't let me be on every single podcast all the goddamn time.
That's all right.
No, but
we beat them to it.
I was going to say, I love being on Dr. 3 is now the first all-female Hearthstone podcast, if I'm not mistaken. So it's pretty dope.
I was just about to make a comment on that. I was going to say I don't know if it's the only all-female one, but it's definitely one of the few. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it is the only one. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the only other one that I know of is, you know, I mean, if you count it as a podcast, is what is it? Nina is Noob and Sun do the like tea YouTube show. So, you know,
Glitter's a part of that too.
That's a YouTube show.
Sun Glitters, yeah.
And therefore it's different. We're a podcast.
That's right.
I will die on this hill, this tiny hill for no reason.
So this is an audio form. We don't have a YouTube version of this yet. We mostly just do the audio. But I'm looking into the camera right now, and I'm looking at you, Draco Cat, and D Money. Not a podcast. You don't put it on my podcatcher. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's great.
Thanks. I'm super excited. I made sure to call all my family at different hours of the night and be like, hey guys, hey, now you have to listen to me all the time. And they're like, no, we don't. We have to be around you at family events. We're not going to listen to you all the time.
And how many of them asked you how well does it pay?
Only one. But yeah.
See, you change your scenery and look what happens.
I know. I'm getting so popular. Just all thanks to the fake plants.
That's right. Well, you know, with that, we have to know, because now you're on the standard podcast. You know, Dr. 3, we do focus on standard and ladder, but you play both standard and BGs. But which one do you consider yourself like, which one? Which one are you, Smarms?
I consider myself a standard player, and then every time I play standard, somebody's like, oh, a change of scenery. I'm like, I think of this as my normal thing. I didn't start playing Battlegrounds until May, and even then, I had to like, it was great because I learned how to play Battlegrounds from Twitch chat, and the delay there was super great. And also, I like took a month off of like streaming in the summer. So there was a month where I just wasn't learning how to play Battlegrounds, and, you know, and I went from that and I decided to enter myself in but even then I've played a Battlegrounds tournament. I have no leg to stand on to say which one I am. It's just kind of like whatever the vibes are that day.
I think that's totally fair. I don't know how long you would like this to be, Tito, so I can just do like 1 or 2 more questions here.
Oh, it doesn't matter. You can whatever you feel like. We don't have a time constraight, really.
This is my problem, is I won't shut up. And this is something that everybody who's ever had to do a podcast with me is like, all right, I guess we're going for record on longest podcast why Smarms won't shut up.
No, we typically go about an hour. That wasn't the goal. The goal was kind of to be about 30 minutes, but I think we've established we're about an hour-long podcast. You're the one that's been already podcasting all day, so ask away.
Okay. Well, Miss Smarms, how much Marvel Snap are you playing?
So a lot less than I had been. I will, you know, take the Marvel Snap break anytime I'm walking up or down a set of stairs or brushing my teeth or doing anything that takes a quick amount of time. I've tried the Marvel Snap while getting changed. Apparently that's like not the best idea. That was a little bit hard to maintain. But I've recently gotten into Mass Effect, and so I was like mainlining that, and it kind of got me out of Snap for a little bit. But it's still quite a lot. However, I didn't get my brother into Marvel Snap until like 2 weeks ago, and he's already like 200 collection levels above me. And I've also gotten his kids into it, which is the best. And my sister-in-law kind of hates me for that because they're all just like stuck in their phones the entire time, like any sort of family things going on. And she's like, that's your fault. And you know what? It kind of is my fault.
Well, now all you need to do is get on a Marvel Snap podcast, and then you can then you can get them to be like, "Can we listen to Auntie Smarms on the podcast?"
I've tried to talk some people into a Snap podcast. Apparently, like no one likes my idea of the game being the podcast being 2 games long, and you have to play the entire time you're podcasting. And it's just like these quick little like bite-sized nuggets, and nobody's so far gone for that. I don't know why.
I think that's amazing. What? Oh,
I mean, maybe that doesn't work in podcasting, but that probably works as a short.
I think a Marvel Snap podcast should be short, because that's like the whole draw of that game, right? Anybody who's looking for like a Marvel Snap podcast wants things quick and snappy, and I think that's what I was going to call it, is snappy. Or something absurd like that. And yeah.
So I think I have an episode for you right here. All right. Welcome to Snappy. My name is Smarms. Oh, look, TVA. I guess we're done.
Honestly, you can't tell me that would be a little bit funny if like this was a podcast that you like routinely listen to, and then it's like all of a sudden like 10 seconds later it's like, all right, podcast done.
Amazing. Well, okay, so maybe you want to start a podcast. You talked about streaming. Let's wrap up the interview with talking about where you would like to see your streaming and your content be kind of by this time next year.
Oh, Christ. All right, what is this, a job interview, guys? What the hell is this? No.
Maybe. I don't know.
We checked your references before we even got you here.
You know what? I've honestly had a really amazing time this year. I really do love streaming a lot more than I thought I ever would. And doing all the, side stuff like now with podcast, I would love to see that grow more. I don't know if it's like realistic to be able to say like, yeah, I'd love to cut my work back to like part-time so I could have any sort of like a social life, because currently it's just like work and Twitch streaming, and that is literally all I do. But I'm having a lot of fun, and yeah, I guess we'll just see where it goes.
All right, I have 2 questions before we wrap up. One, should Ridiculous Hat be afraid of you coming for his crown of podcast king or queen?
You mean, am I going to steal his hat? Of course I'm going to steal his hat. But as far as like title of how many podcasts, no. Man, are you kidding me? I don't have enough brain cells to figure out what Ridiculous Hat does. He's got so many different ideas, and I'm like, all right, I have 1/2 of an like original thought each week about Hearthstone, and I just shop that around to every place, and it's like, you better be interested in this one idea because it's the best I've got.
All right, and final question: Are you excited that the Bone Zone will continue on in forever now in Death Knights, leaving Mage? And is that good?
I am so excited, because then maybe the shirts, which are halfway done and sitting all over my living room, will then be applicable. Because I promised everybody, like, a few people, Legend of the Bone Zone shirts from the Mage Skeleton things. Life got busy. I have most of everything done, but I just have to, like, iron on a few more things. And now it's like, oh, thank God, it'll be slightly relevant once again.
No, if for anyone that may not understand this, I was watching Smarms stream one night, and she was playing Spooky Mage, and I said, "This is not Spooky Mage. This is Bone Zone Mage," and that took off that night. And like 2 days later, she's streaming, and she has a shirt that she made that said "Legend of the Bone Zone" with a skeleton on it. Like, that's the commitment to the bit that we like here.
Here's the thing, is like my shirt was very much the alpha, whereas like the ones that I ended up making and why it's taken forever is they have glow-in-the-dark lettering and glow-in-the-dark skeletons. They're all different, and they're all different skeletons. And I don't know if you know about like making shirts. All right, this is a tangent, but we're along for this ride already. So when you make shirts, you have to like peel out the individual pieces after it's been cut by the machine. And I don't know if you know how intricate skeletons can be, but it's like pretty intricate. So like I've spent hours like delicately like picking out on these like crosshatch patterns just to make sure. And so it's like, that's my bad for not getting the rest of these out and just doing a simple design. But anyways.
It sounds like a shirt I'm never going to
making.
want to wear. I'm just going to want to keep somewhere and never have to launder it because...
Oh no, man! It'll have dog hair in it. Like, don't worry. This will be a piece of junk T-shirt.
I want one. I need one.
Absolutely. 4 to 6 business months work out for you.
They'll be ready for next Halloween.
Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Well, all this talk is getting me really hungry. So let's go ahead and dive into the main course. Main course bumper. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. All right, so we are continuing our monthly topic of basics and how to improve. Here, last month we talked about phases. Now that we know about phases, it's time to talk about. So Dawn, why don't you take it away?
That's right. Yes. So just as a quick little recap, last time we talked about, like you said, like phases, just kind of how your turn plays out and how like open your turn can be in Hearthstone, because there's not specific phases like there is in other card games, right? You don't have untap, upkeep, all that like Magic does. It's just your turn and then you just do stuff, and then you hit end turn and then your opponent does stuff.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you there. Counterspell.
True.
I mean,
Yeah.
secrets are so easy. They still only happen on your turn. They just happen to like go into effect on the other person's turn.
Okay,
I tried to play Magic before, and that shit is so hard. That is so hard. It's like, I don't know what phase we're in. Like, what is this? I needed a flow chart. I needed diagrams.
All you need to do is this. Go to your local comic shop on a Friday night. They have Friday Night Magic. And then find somebody playing a blue deck. And anything you do, they're just going to be like, counterspell, interrupt. And you're just going to want to punch them in the face. And then you'll understand the phases.
I hate that idea, but thanks anyways.
Oh, okay. Well, how about some ideas that you'll like? Let's talk about, during your turn, how to use the different resources. And in Hearthstone, there actually still are several resources. And I'm kind of glad that we did this segment after Death Knights was revealed and like as it's getting ready to come out, because I do think the runes in Death Knights is also another resource that we should talk about. But a couple of the main resources that we definitely want to cover are cards. Just cards as a resource, right? You have to put cards into your deck, your health, and your mana. And then, there's a couple other resources in there, but those are like the main three. You have to put cards in your deck, and then within cards, you kind of have like little subcategories of how to use those resources. So if we look at cards, you have card draw, things that maybe shuffle cards back into your deck, or something that like you're getting extra value off of your cards. It's going to, battle cry, and you get to discover something. So it kind of replaces itself in your hand. These are all different ways to use your cards. And one of the biggest things is, I guess, like kind of knowing how to let those cards work together, but just looking at how you want to use your cards in general. Some cards, you're putting maybe into an aggressive deck. They're all going to have lots of attack damage. And you want to be using those cards in that aggressive manner. We talked in the previous month and the previous segment about maybe not trading as much and going face. Aggressive decks really take advantage of that. So you're going to have cards that are giving you a lot of, maybe attack damage or buffing your minions, things like that. But maybe you have a deck that wants to draw. There's going to be some crossover as well in some of these. So some decks that draw a lot also tend to be very aggressive or high damage type of decks. But then you also could have decks that just want to draw and do a lot of burst damage much later in the game. I think we're going to see that coming up with like the Arcane Bolt in Mage and all the synergy with those cards. But what do you two think about just like cards in general and kind of using those? I think especially draw is just really an interesting resource to talk about.
I think it's. Oh, go ahead, Swans. You go first, please.
Oh, I was gonna say I think this is definitely something like that I've struggled with. So my brother has played Hearthstone since like the beta in 2014, and his like the things that he's really into are the rogue decks that are so great at synergizing. And try as I might, that just still only sometimes works out for me on like trying to get everything to synergize. I do best on the decks that are just very straightforward. So synergizing has taken me a while to learn about, and particularly like with drawing. The other thing is I will tend to overly hit minions, which is I know something that is like when I definitely should be going face. Yeah. But here's the thing is when I first started Hearthstone, I was like learning in just the most random smattering of like different advice at like way random times. And I'm like, no, okay, whatever. And so I would routinely get killed by these giant minions because I did not feel the need to clear them because I 100% went face. And so then I overcorrected. And now I'm trying to get back to this like nice middle ground of like what percentage I hit face versus like what percentage I attack after minions. But
yeah, it's definitely something that's difficult to learn. But I think in that same kind of vein is also talking about kind of how difficult sometimes it can be to manage your cards. And that's why I definitely wanted to talk about that. You said like the draw. I think Rogue is definitely a good example of that. There's oftentimes in Rogue, some of the decks, like you hear people talk about like Miracle Rogue, for example. And these kind of miracle decks are based on drawing a whole bunch of cards and then kind of doing, big swing turns, having like a lot of cards that you might play in one turn, drawing a ton in one turn. And sometimes it can be hard to kind of understand how those play out, how you need to use them, or even like doing all of the actions fast enough in a turn when you're trying to draw all this stuff or play all the things.
Oh God. Yeah.
There's a lot, right?
And then like on the using the resources, one of the things that I also know that I am 100% like at fault for doing is saving them for like one gigantic thing and just dying in the meantime. And so like trying to get that balance of like, all right, this is not the most optimal use of my resources. However, it is going to keep me alive long enough to maybe try to do something more optimal later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another very important thing that, people can miss. I mean, even people who are close to legend, like, I mean, even me for like a long time, even being close to legend or even sometimes being legend, especially when new cards come out or new kind of decks come together, it can be difficult to really pick up on, oh, okay, I need to kind of play this card at just like a, middle ground kind of value. Like, sure, I could wait and save it. Like, I think, let's talk about Jace, for example, like with Fell Spells. I think that's a good example of talking about your card resources. You could play it as soon as you have the mana. Maybe you've only played 2 Fell Spells, though. You could play it. You're not getting great value. But oftentimes I do think people will hold something like that for far too long, saying, oh, I still have all of these Fell Spells left in my deck. I need to find stuff to play those. But instead...
I think a lot of that comes with your understanding of the decks too. Like
Yeah.
if like your win condition, your only win condition is Jace, then you probably think about holding. But like I think I got better as a Hearthstone player when I learned to not hold cards necessarily. Like if your best play is running out Bran on turn 3 because you have nothing else in your hand to do, and you're playing against somebody that's going to be the aggressor in that scenario, holding Bran to even play a turn or two later with something else is not going to do you any good. Sometimes it's good to just get something on board to block. Bran works as like a taunt because you play Bran, people are going to want to get that off the board as soon as possible. So Bran almost has taunt on him, and if they're punching Bran, they're not punching you, and you're saving your life as a resource at the cost of a card. And in that case, that might be just enough. So a lot of people will not play those cards because, I need to play Bran with something else. But you really have to. You once you understand, I need to do this. I need to get something in play. It makes a gigantic difference.
Yeah. So I think to wrap up to talk about just cards as a resource, I think that the way that you described that is fantastic. And I will say, to make it easier, think about it as you literally build your deck with cards. If you are not playing your cards, they're not doing anything, right? Like you build your deck with cards to be able to play the cards. So you do have to play them in order to win and to do things in the game. So if you're
not letting perfect be the enemy of good enough and just getting something out there so you survive.
Yes.
I love that saying. I use that all the time, actually. And one other thing too is to understand, I think the differences in how those resources are used. If you play a card, say the one draw a holy spell from your deck, that is using a resource from your deck. It's cycle. It's pulling something out of your deck. Your deck is now thinner, which is good because you're hoping to try to get to your good cards, and by making your deck thinner, your draw phase makes it so you're getting to your good cards faster, which is different than you're still adding a card to your hand either way, but if you do a discover, that is adding a card to your hand. They're both kind of replacing, but one is thinning your deck, the other is giving you more resources. So if I think thinking about that in terms of deck building and just even piloting a deck is understanding the difference there is huge, because they're both adding one card to your hand or two cards or whatever it might be, but one is moving you towards your win condition by getting you to those cards faster, and the other one is just giving you more resources.
Yeah. Well, I think let's kind of shift a little bit here and then talk about the second resource, which is your mana. Now, I think we'll talk about the average scenario. I don't think we need to dive too deeply into like guff with Druid and going above the normal mana and stuff. Like, obviously that's kind of its own thing, but in most games you get that 1 mana every turn. So, on turn 1, you'll have 1 mana to use. Turn 2, you'll have 2 mana, so on, up to 10. And then after that, you will always have 10 mana to start the turn. Now, the kind of general rule of thumb is to use all of your mana, or as much of your mana every turn as you can. There, if you hear a lot of pro players, I think like Fino especially, will talk about things like that, like, if you are on turn 6 and you have a minion in your hand that costs 6, play that 6-cost minion for that mana. Play the biggest thing, use all of that mana. But what this does is it just gets you to think about using that mana efficiently. There's obviously going to be turns where maybe you're at 4 mana and you don't have a 4-cost card in your hand. Maybe you only have something that costs 3. You might have to do that. But maybe you have something that costs 2 and you get to also do a hero power. Now again, depending on the case, what hero you're playing, maybe the hero power doesn't really do anything. And I think that is also a huge case where Tito was talking about, maybe in the case of, maybe you just play Bran on turn 3 because You're actually using your mana there. You're doing something. Whereas if you didn't do that, what would you do instead? That's one big question you gotta ask yourself. If I'm not playing this like biggest minion, or if I'm not playing kind of this efficient mana costing thing, what do I do instead? Am I just passing and not doing anything? Sometimes that might be right. But again, you're not using your cards at that point then. So you have to think about, how do you actually want to use your mana? And again, that also does lead into knowing your deck, right? If you're playing an aggressive deck, you want to be using your mana to put minions on the board, to create damage, to attack, to, send a spell to your opponent's face or something for damage. If you are playing a bit of a slower deck that has to build up resources, like Tito was saying, you got to get to some of those cards. Maybe the most efficient thing is using your mana to draw more stuff so you have better options for next turn. Talked about draw a bit previously, and I think in last segment, but that's, using that mana as best you can every turn will give you that edge. If you kind of say, oh, I really want to save this brand for later, or I really want to save this draw until I absolutely have to use draw and I'm kind of just nothing else in my hand and then I'll draw. It might be too late at that point. So you got to think about, how do I want to use my mana every turn to do the best stuff?
Okay. So I think one of the things that like me as a very much learned from all over player is it was very hard to learn like where that balance strikes based on like what the deck was named. And so like I wouldn't understand that like with control you want to be clearing all their stuff all the time. Am I mistaken on that? Or
it depends on the matchup. Like,
yeah.
Even if you're in this is almost a little bit of a tangent, but even if you're in a control deck, depending on the matchup, you may be the aggressor. Like, they basically say, depending on, this is about knowing your deck and knowing the meta and knowing what they're playing. But, like, there are occasions where you're playing a deck and against one deck, I'm going to clear everything they got. But then you're playing another deck and you know that, hey, I actually have to be the aggressive person and I want to spend more time making them react to me versus reacting to them. A lot of these decks depend on not just what you have, but what you know they're doing.
Hey guys, I think we need to make like a flow chart and like an infographic, okay, so like you can like follow along like very systematically.
I will say, I think knowing matchups and knowing like who you are in the matchup and stuff is a bit of a more advanced
right. That's our 200. After we get through basics, Dawn will be back with our 200 level courses. But to the point of the resources, and I think we touched a little bit on this week. Using your mana efficiently doesn't necessarily just mean spending the mana. It means doing things in an order. If you have 6 mana and you have a 4-cost card and you're a warlock and you know you're going to hero power and play this card, hero power first. Because if I play the card in hero power and I get a better play that I could have made off that hero power, I can't do that. But if I hero power first, and then now I can make that better play, I can now make that better play. And again, some of this stuff could be matchup dependent, like or discover card. If I have 2 3-cost cards and I have 6 mana, one of the 3-cost cards I'm going to play is a discover effect. Play that one first, because if you play it second, you can't play what you discovered if that would be something that would be beneficial to you. So ordering these things is important.
That's a military tactic that like it's you always do the thing that gives you most options first and then you do whatever second.
Yeah, shoot, communicate, move on out. That's what we but and again, a lot of it, some of it's matches, like for the most part, like, if you're new to Hearthstone or newish to Hearthstone, and playing your cards efficiently is the very first step you can make. Then as you start to learn that, then you can start thinking, well, I have 6 mana. I played my 4. I played my 4/4 for 4. Now I can hero power, unless you know that, hey, I'm playing against this deck, and if they have something they can ping, they can do this and all that. That's more advanced tactics. So if you're looking to basics, just spend your mana efficiently and try to spend it as best you can to use it all each turn.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, talking about, of course, we want to build on these basics, and yeah, matchups, learning that kind of stuff, learning, oh, this might be a better card to play later, and I do want to hold that in that matchup. That's definitely an advanced thing. But if you are really trying to learn, or you're really struggling to kind of get wins or to climb ladder, definitely look at that. How are you spending your mana each turn? I mean, are you using as much mana as you can? It is super basic to say that. And yes, there's so many different scenarios where you could say, okay, well, I'm going to play this and this card, or this and this, or just this one thing. But, even if you have to just jot some notes to yourself, say, turn 4, I played 3 mana because I had no other cards in my hand that costed 4. Okay. Then you have a base of like what you did and why. Then right, okay, it's turn 5 and I played my 5-cost minion. Then if you kind of start to do that, then the end of the game you can say, hey, I ended up winning this game. Then you can look back. You might actually be able to trace that win back to saying, I was playing stuff every turn. Now, if you have 5 mana and you play a single 1-cost minion, and then on turn 6, you have 6 mana and you play a 2-cost minion, you're probably not winning that game. You're not doing enough with your mana. And you'll hear people refer to that as floating mana because you have some left over. So there is a difference. Yes, you can start to, as you get better, get into the matchup dependent or all that kind of stuff. But just the simplicity of looking and saying, how much mana am I actually using every turn, will start to help you identify where you could be making some mistakes or where you could improve on your resource management.
And if you have, use a little bit of common sense too with this. If you have 5 mana and you can play a 3-cost card and a 2-cost card, but you have aggro staring you down or they're going to hit you in the face, and you also have a 4-cost card with taunt that's going to be better suited in that situation. In situations like that, it's probably better to play the 4-cost card. So don't use this as a strict always rule. Don't spend 5 mana to spend 5 mana. If you can see the better play is to spend 4 mana to play the taunt minion or whatever it might be. Use your judgment. Just try to spend the mana if it makes the most sense.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been in scenarios where you can just be like, why did I play that? I don't know. I feel like I have a lot where you play stuff and you're like, why did I do that though? And yeah, you definitely don't want to. Smarms, have you done that?
There's no amount of knowledge that's going to get you out of being a person, me personally, who just makes dumb mistakes all the time, which is why I was thinking, y'all, we are really sleeping on checklists here. So when I was getting my pilot's license, you had a checklist for everything. And honestly, I think we need to start bringing that out for Hearthstone. And, y'all who are very informed, we work on getting a good checklist together.
Well, this is what I do with, this is why I started streaming basically, is because I am someone that will see what I'm playing, they'll make their turn, and I'll go click, 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 done. And I'll be like, wait, maybe I could have done this other play. So if I'm sitting there and I'm talking with chat and I'm saying, okay, what can I do here? I can play this, which is my first line of thinking. But what if I did this? Or what if I did this? Does this make sense? No, my first thought was great, or the right play. Or, I don't know, if you think about it, take your time, and don't just do the first thing that pops into your brain. You're going to be more efficient. And that means talking to the chat, and that means thinking about
Tito,
things like you're explaining it to them.
Tito, you clearly don't have ADHD, is what I was going to say. I have never not once done the first thing that popped into my head. Well, I don't even know what that would be like.
I have been on, as of 47, I'm 47 years old, and I have been on ADHD medication for the last 4 months now. So,
okay.
Yes. And that's when I decided, I didn't have enough time to do everything I do as it is. So I started this medicine, and I kind of got a basic diagnosis, and then I started podcasting, doing streaming, and also doing YouTube content. So I added more chaos. I took advantage of this and added more chaos to my life to get me back to the same spot that I was.
So nice. Relatable. Yeah. Me, I'm doing so much. I'm overwhelmed. You know what I should do? I should also do this other show every week. Yeah.
You gotta get that dopamine rush. If it's like not chaotic, it doesn't feel good.
That's right. But your gameplay and learning and improving should not be chaotic. So let's bring it back around to that.
And let me say, these two stand-up boring people, sometimes you can just play fuck it, we ball. You will lose, but it's a lot of fun.
I play a lot of decks that are very chaotic in essence. That
okay.
When I'm bored, like I'll go into Sunkeeper Ra a Rogue or something weird like that. So yeah, sometimes you play a lot of fuck it. But I'm gonna have one stream. I'm gonna come watch your stream, and I'm gonna have the rule is you're going to have to explain everything to me before you make the moves.
And man, it'll never happen. Good luck though. I support your dreams, but you know.
But you know, that was something you mentioned, Tito, kind of like why you started streaming and like talking about your plays and stuff. And I feel very similarly. Like when I was first trying to learn, I would try to watch streams or ask questions. And I think for me, a big part of that was also like why certain cards were included in decks. Because when I was looking at that, I'd see a card or I'd try playing and I'm like, that card sucks. You know, and then I would ask, like, why is this card in the deck? And people would just say, oh, it's good. Like, that does not help me.
But why?
Yes, but, like, tell me why it's good so that I understand, so I can take that understanding into my own deck building, into my own games. And when I started just adjusting my mindset on, like, okay, and that was something I told myself, when I'm learning and I'm playing and I'm really trying to actually like sit down and focus and learn like a new deck or really learn how cards work, I said to myself, every time that I kind of think about this, I have to have a reason for what I'm doing. Even if it's wrong, I don't care, because, you know, in Hearthstone, I think especially like as you get higher and higher, correct plays kind of become a little less, like the line is blurred, right? Like, you even see pros that are like, they don't always agree on the correct play in some cases. So the more that you play and the more that you make yourself have a reason for why you're doing things, like Tito's example earlier, hey, I'm not going to spend all 5 mana this turn. I'm going to spend 4 and put out a taunt because they're about to attack me in the face for a bunch of damage versus, well, I just need to spend all my mana, so I'm going to play these things. I mean, you have a reason for both, but it's starting to get that understanding of, okay, I'm giving each play a reason, and then I will kind of analyze and think about this more as to maybe which one ended up being better and which one I think would ultimately have the best chance of me winning the game.
Which brings us back to last week's episode on replays.
Exactly. Those help so much. But knowing why you made plays helps even when going back and looking at replays.
And it's very easy to fall back in old patterns because I find myself even streaming being like click click boom, like whoops, wait, hold on. Let's get us out of that. But I believe you said there was one more resource, right, Dawn?
Yes, one more, and that is your health. Now, I think there's a couple of ways that you can really kind of use health as a resource. One of them is when you attack, specifically, because more classes have that, right? So you have a weapon equipped, and maybe you actually attack into an opponent minion. You're going to take damage from that, but you're clearing that. So you also can maybe think about it sometimes if you're watching like a big tournament or something, you might see some of the pro players attack into like an 8-8 or a 10-10. Sometimes you see them maybe attack into a Denathrius that's on board, and you think, oh my god, they just took 10 damage. Like, what are they doing? That's terrible.
They just took 10 damage and let them heal for 10 damage.
Yeah.
So that's a 20-point swing.
Exactly. So it seems super bad. But then again, that's where you got to step back and say, okay, why did they do that? And the reason why is often, in that case, that they're taking that damage once, but if they let it live, it's going to be able to attack more than once. So they, in the long run, will take more damage. So they are using that health as a resource to basically say, I'm going to take a smaller amount of damage now than I would in the long term. So you're using that way. Another one is also something Tito brought up earlier, is like with Warlock, for example, the hero power. That is arguably, or maybe not, depending on who you ask, the best hero power in the game. Being able to take 2 damage and draw a card. I think especially like before Demon Hunter, people probably would argue Demon Hunter has the best hero power now. But like before then, you know, being able to pay that little bit of life to get an extra card. Find a different resource. Maybe you find a damage spell that can remove an enemy minion. Maybe you find that taunt minion that's going to keep you alive. Maybe you find that little bit of damage that you get to send face, and now you just won the game. Using that health as a resource gets you to other things. It gets you to other turns, or it gets you to your other cards that you want to play.
Not only that, if you clear something with your face, yeah, you took the damage, but now there's something that's not only going to go to your face, but also it protects your minions potentially. So if you're trying to swing the board and you have a weapon, and you can take out their minions with a weapon and keep your minions alive, that right there is I think a great use of your health for a resource. But you also have to be aware, again, what they're going to do, because sometimes if you use your health as a resource too much, then you're just dead. You don't want to do their job for them. You have to. That comes along with understanding of your decks you're playing against. We're again talking about the 200 level courses, but it's not as simple as, hey, let me hit that button for the Warlock because, oh wait, I only had 2 health left, now I'm dead. Like, you have to know what's coming and what's that. Also, it looks like Druid's going to be interesting in the next expansion.
I was going to say,
as a resource.
True. Yeah, that's what the new cards where you spend your armor. Honestly, that looks like a lot of fun.
Be fun in Linecracker Druid and Wild, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think the last little point is just talking about Death Knights. Obviously, we haven't gotten to actually play with them yet. So this is one that we can kind of work into the next, couple of segments and talk about. But I did just want to bring that up because the fact that a lot of those Death Knight cards have 3 blood runes or 2 frost runes, that's an additional resource now that you do kind of have to think about with that deck. So if you are new, Death Knights might be super fun and maybe you want to get into that, but just kind of be aware that that's an additional resource and an additional thing with deck building that you really will have to think about specifically. So if you are really learning and you're just trying to jump into these basics and you kind of really feel like you just want to get a handle on some of these basics that we've talked about before you dig into that, I would recommend, at least for the little while you're learning and improving, kind of stay away from Death Knights a little bit until you get some of this other stuff down a little bit, and then you can kind of get into that. Or if you really do want to play Death Knights, either go back and listen to the Edelweiss episode on deck building and maybe bring some of that in, or
listen to Edelweiss on our next episode, who's going to be here to talk about Death Knights and building decks with Death Knights.
I did not have that information when I was saying this, so I have that information now. Or listen to that episode. Or if you want to play and you don't want to worry about that, just copy somebody's deck and then figure out these basics, how they apply to Death Knights. There you go.
Net decking is acceptable. Is that what we're getting at?
Oh, totally.
You can still play Hearthstone and
yeah.
And One final thought from me on resources, and this kind of goes back to cards. I was going to bring it up before, but I had to step away. We had the dogs barking, and I had to sneak away. But one of the things you'll often see, especially with aggro decks, is that they run out of cards as a resource. So one of the most, like, you'll see a deck and you'll be like, well, I have all the good cards, but I don't get them down in time. I don't understand what's going on. A lot of times you run out of that resource. So early on in this expansion, aggro druid was a thing, and it was a good deck, or it was a decent deck against some archetypes. But if it didn't get you down in 3 or 4 or 5 turns, it ran out of gas. It didn't have the ability to keep those cards going until they figured out that, hey, we need to find a way to work composting in there, which composting, it gives all your minions death rattle, draw another card. So all of a sudden that deck went from having no resource replenishment to lots of resource replenishment, and it made a gigantic difference. So when you're if you're into the deck building and that's what you're doing, remember it's good to have the good cards, but you also have to have the ability to keep those cards coming into your hand, because when you get down to just top decking a card, it's not going to be a good situation for you, especially in those kind of situations. Sorry, I meant to add that earlier, but I had to step away.
No worries. Yeah. So I think just kind of ultimately, again, last time for talking about the way you play your turns, we kind of covered a variety of like how you manage the way that you're playing cards or you're doing things. But this time I really wanted to cover the different resources, because I think sometimes people kind of gloss over that. They say, of course, yeah, I have cards, I have mana, but health isn't always considered a resource, especially when you're learning. And, I think it's really important to actually take a look at how you're using your cards and how you're looking at your mana, especially when you want to be improving.
I don't know about you, Dawn and Smarms, but all this talk about resources has gotten me a little hungry for some dessert. What do you think?
Always.
Actually, Dawn, before we get to that, do we have a tease for next month's topic, or are we not quite sure where we're going yet?
I haven't fully decided, because there's kind of 2 that I think I could do, but yeah, well, I'll do that. We're going to talk about archetypes next month, because we keep talking about things like aggro, if you're an aggro deck, or if you're control deck, and there is a lot of kind of confusion and differences in that stuff. So I think next month we're going to talk about archetypes and kind of what makes things different and how the differences will play out in a game.
Okay, so you'll be rock, Smarms, you'll be paper, and I'll be scissors, okay?
Exactly.
All right, so Dawn, where can people find you on the socials?
You can find me on Twitter at DawnieDK, that's DAWNIEDK, and on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, all that good stuff, DragonRider TCCG, and then once a week also talking on Dr. 3HS, we talk about standard Hearthstone, and then also once a week on TCCG Roundtable, talking about all sorts of card games. We talk about like all the card games. Very exciting. In the first, we record that on Fridays, but on the first Friday of December, we actually are getting a recent world champion in one of the card games on the show. So
Ooh.
Very excited for that.
That's awesome.
In the business, we call it tease. Go ahead and listen to that. How about yourself, Smarms? Where can people find you?
So I'm on both Twitter and Twitch as Send Me Your Arms, and now you can listen to me as an official co-host of the Dr. 3 Hearthstone podcast.
Fantastic. And you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at Tito Santana HS, and you can email the show at breadandbutterhs@gmail.com. That's just the letter N. DragonRider, is there anybody you'd like to shout out today?
Oh goodness. I'm going to shout out. Well, first of all, obviously have to shout out Smarms because she is wonderful, and yeah, she has joined us now in Doctor 3. Super excited for that. That's kind of been like a several weeks, in the works kind of thing. So excited that it's all official and out there. Going to shout out my wonderful Amber Flight crew, ramping up this 3-year anniversary and getting ready for lots of stuff in 2023. And always got to shout out my husband for being super supportive and playing lots of board games and, keeping me going.
And losing those board games gracefully, right?
Yeah, totally.
So graceful.
Oh, yes, very much.
How about you, Smarms? Is anybody you like to shout out today?
Oh God, this might be kind of random, but my 2 moderators on Twitch, it's whenever I have like a bad idea, I'll just like drag them kicking and screaming along with me, and they're nice enough to do it. Like recently we've been playing like group battlegrounds on Friday nights, and it's like if no one else shows up, I have at least these 2 chuckleheads that are willing to hang out and play with me, so they're great. It's Gimpy and RL Schism. Gimpy doesn't stream as much, but Schism streams mainly horror games, funny enough, even though he's like way better at Hearthstone than I'll ever be.
Well, not if you keep doing weekly podcasts. You're sure to improve, especially if you get to hop on ours once in a while. I want to shout out to Doc. Doc, we miss you tonight. We hope you feel better. We hope that you're. I'm sure you're gonna have to do a lot of baking into the Christmas holiday as well, but hopefully it settles down to some semblance of sanity after the next couple weeks. I like to shout out to Smarms, who filled in at the very last minute, and to the detriment of, I think, a little bit of your baking time. So I appreciate you making the adjustment to be here tonight.
No, thanks for having me on. It's exciting. I definitely have learned things and, need to get better about like asking myself why on earth I'm making any given play and during a turn. But yeah, it's fun.
It is a good place to start. But anyway, that's the end of the show, folks. We're toast. See ya.
Toodles!
Slide 2 brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.